Hey there.
Hi there. Fancy seeing you here.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, well, wait a minute. I thought it was your show. Thank you for having me on the show. That's how I'm supposed to start. Let's go back to places. Back to one. Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Are you kidding me? Everybody else that I've had on the show up to this point has been but a warm-up for this moment.
You are too kind. I'm just glad that we're not in the same room because we usually have to be separated when we are.
People get very angry and distressed.
Matthew, Rob, separate corners.
Yeah,
separate corners.
We're trying to get some work done here. Actually, that kind of work that we do is something that I want to speak to you about here, because that is the process of being involved in the development of a new play. For actors, I think is an unsung skill and one that is not spoken about or taught a lot when people are coming up. And yet I think it's an incredibly important skill to learn. But before we get into that,
sure.
I did want to ask you a question. I do research on people before I have them on.
Oh no!
And I did want to ask a question about your time as a dungeon master, because I've noticed that the discipline thing. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get that photo? I thought that was blocked from most countries. There's a lot of leather. Actually, it's pleather, I think it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have like the Batman musculature that's underneath the pleather, obviously.
I thought you came with that.
I thought so too, but apparently it was the pleather was a little too thick. Yes, that was from a production of, I love that you call it Dungeon Master Rob. It does feel a little bit like that, full on headband. That's from a production of the Scottish play that I was part of at Antaeus, at the NCIS Theater Company in Los Angeles. And for whatever reason, they wanted us in a little bit of pleather. So, no, Jessica Olsen was the costume designer, did an absolutely phenomenal job with it. And yes, that was my dungeon work. I've tried to keep it hidden, but
I thought
some things are
Next
found.
Stop Paradise or whatever that Dana Delaney movie was.
Oh, right. Exit to Eden, wasn't it?
Exit to Eden, yes. Next Stop Paradise.
I don't know what you were thinking watching it, but I know it was called Exit to Eden. Yes, one of Garrett Marshall's features. Rosie O'Donnell in that one too, as I recall. Oh, so many memories you just flooded right into my head. Thank you.
The 80s.
Oh, the 80s. But yes, I like to bring some of my dungeon. It made me realize that in college, when I first attempted the role of the Thane of, Who's-He What's-It, Coeurage, Gloms, whatever you want to call them, Mackers. I call him Big Mac. The first time I attempted Big Mac, the idea was to dress us down. Don't laugh. It's not funny. Dress us down and make us like we would like in Amazonian cultures. Sometimes they take the armor off to fight. So we basically got less and less clothed for the fight. So by the end, they dubbed it around the university, around Northwestern University, McButt. We were doing McButt because, and I will share this, the costume designer on the first day said, why don't you get undressed and put on this, and handed me a dance belt. And they were going to build up the costume from the dance belt. I didn't know any better, so I put it on. Unfortunately, they washed those dance belts on high. So by the time we were performing it, they were really tight. And when I'd go thrown across, the machete cut would happen, and the splinters were cutting into my flesh, and I'm actually bleeding in certain places. It was non-union, it was college. I never knew what was coming out from underneath the dance belt, so I had to stay low to the ground. Let me just be clear. It sort of split me in two.
Okay.
Or one.
Hold on one second.
Go ahead. Is that HR?
I'll be right back.
Oh. I think
I've never left the show before.
I think you're turning off the power in your home. I'm so sorry. McButt, yes. It was a very exposing
Big
production.
Mac is great. That is I would like to see a production of Big Mac because you're reminding me of back in the 90s. There was a thing back in New York where they had a Hamlet marathon.
Oh my!
Where every small theater company in New York City would do some version of Hamlet, and I went to see a brilliant one, but there was one I didn't get to see, but I wanted to because they did it in rap and called it The Tragedy of Hammy T.
Wow!
How
could you miss that?
I think it was up against the one that I saw, which was also quite fabulous. My friend Anne was in it, and it was they had when Fortinbras came in at the end, the actor playing Fortinbras spoke in gibberish and had a translator.
Wow.
It was hysterical.
That must be incredible.
Yeah.
Complete gibberish.
Yeah.
With simultaneous translation.
Yeah, it was great.
We did it at the Shakespeare Theater in DC. Michael Kahn directed a production of Henry V. And the French court, we were all in big, puffy, we're huge wigs and huge, like we had hockey gear underneath our upholstered clothing. And then we were in Coeurage, like Doc Marten platform boots. They're about 12 inches tall. So we were just waiting to fall over, topple like some kind of huge, very graceless horse. But we all spoke in French. So the French court was all speaking in French, and they had two reporters at the side of the stage with microphones and trench coats translating simultaneously the French court for it. And it was quite an exciting kind of way to do it, except for the Coeurage. That was dangerous as hell. Right. But anyway.
So you mentioned that this was when you were in college.
Yes.
So,
well, that picture you showed was actually just in 2000 and.
No, but
only about 10 years ago.
Talking about a production that you did
in
college.
Make Budge in college.
Leads me into did you study theater? Was this your chosen path?
It was my chosen path. It wasn't part of a community service project. I chose theater when I was about 10 or 11 years old, when I was first kind of given the opportunity to act. So by the time I got to college, I was like, okay, going to Northwestern theater program there. They were crazy enough to let me in, and my parents, who were, came from education, said, you need to get a backup plan. And I've always felt like if you have a safety net, you're going to jump or fall. Right. So I'll make up a backup plan. My older brother was studying philosophy at the University of Michigan. So my backup plan was the double major in theater and philosophy.
Well, philosophy is a sure bet.
Right? It's gotten me so far. And so has the theater degree. But yeah, I double majored in theater and philosophy at Northwestern. Wow. And but I knew kind of when I was 9 or 10 years old that it was what I wanted to do for my life.
Okay. That's gonna lead
Was that a big mistake, Matt? You said that like
No. You are, and I say this without reservation, one of my favorite actors. And you have appeared in one of my favorite productions.
I love that. Thank you.
We're going to talk about later. And I have a little clip to play, and a little story to tell about it.
Thank you. Thank you for what you just said.
Yeah. But you are one of my favorite actors to watch, and you are one of my favorite actors to work with, although we've never been in a production. We've done many workshops together, and I always have a very hard time when I'm working with you because I can't decide whether or not I want to work with you or just sit back and be entertained.
Well, that streak goes two ways, Matt. Right. I can say that as well.
So studied in college, and then did you go to grad school, or did you start working right away?
No, I started working right away. I started waiting tables right away, right after I got out of school. No, actually, I was my dad was a university professor turned educational administrator, so he was a dean of different universities. And I remember when I was in my freshman year, I picked up 2 books from the drama bookstore in Chicago, the original theater guide, to figure out who was going to get my new headshot and who was going to hire me for their summer season. And I also got the graduate theater theater school directory. And I remember talking to my parents on the phone, and my dad said, why did you get the grad school directory? And I said, well, I thought I might want to teach one day. And he said, oh, no, kiddo, don't do that. Don't sell yourself short. You need to go out there and act. And I remember thinking, like, wait, if my dad, the educator, is telling me I need to act, then I better do that. And I put that grad school director away, and I never looked at it again.
Good for him.
Yeah, I was amazed by it. It was great advice.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, I found myself teaching anyway. So
no, teaching is what you and I should be doing after we fail.
After, before, during, it's part of the failure.
During our actually teaching, which we both do, I feel serves and improves the work so much.
Agree completely.
When you were in Chicago, did you was there any crossover between Northwestern and Columbia College at all?
Not really, no. The only crossover was when we found ourselves working on productions together from both of the schools, but I didn't have any crossover with either Columbia or DePaul.
Okay, because I was just wondering if you ran across Sheldon Patinkin at any point in your...
I never was so lucky to run across Sheldon Patinkin, but yes. I know of him well.
I grew up on his lap, kind of.
I love.
When I was very young, because lucky to have known him and studied with him for a while. Just a tremendous talent and gift to the theater that he was. So then Chicago, graduating from Northwestern, straight out to LA, or did you stay around Chicago for a while?
I stayed around Chicago for about 3 years and kind of, started pounding the pavement there, and then went to New York and was in New York for 3 years before coming out to Los Angeles in 97. Good Lord, it's been since 97 that we've been here.
Wow.
So yeah, it certainly feels like home by now, but I spent a fair amount of time in Chicago and New York, and about a whole year in Washington, D.C. while getting started before coming out to California.
Wow. Okay. Great. So then out to California, television, lots of theater. You're a member of Antaeus.
I am indeed, yes. For about 10 years now, I've been a member and was part of the artistic team we were artistic directors together. There were 3 of us who kind of steered the ship around for a few years. So yeah, we got
was that hack Bill Brocktrup?
That's right. He's right here. Bill, come on over. You can come out of your cage.
What a hack.
I first started with John Sloan and Tony Amendola, and Tony was given liberty to do it for 7 months, and then his wife wisely said, "You're out of there after that time." And so Judith took him back, and Bill came on board, and John and Bill and I did it for almost 8 years together. Well, 7 years. Then John jumped off the carousel, and I jumped off the carousel a year later. I think Bill's still there.
Arguably the best theater company in LA.
I wouldn't disagree with that. It's got a beautiful, very deep, lovely bench, and I'm very proud to be a part of that crew.
I had the wonderful Seamus Dever on the show.
Yes.
So
he's a good egg, that man.
He's a terrific. He's one of the founders, right?
I'm not sure. I don't think Seamus ever. He might have been an early member, but I don't think he founded it. The founders are the founding artistic directors were Dakin Matthews and Lillian Garrett Grove. Wow. Somewhere around 1991, when I think Seamus was probably 6 years old at that age.
Seamus was, I think, yeah, he was. He was born in 85 or something like that. You smack me if he
wasted on the young.
So let's talk about you teach, and as do I. And do you teach? I'm always interested to speak to people who teach to find out if they teach. Actually, here's the question: method or toolbox?
Toolbox.
When I say method, I don't mean method. Yeah. I mean, but do you teach a method or do you teach a toolbox?
I teach an entire toolbox. I felt that I got a great, through my training, whatever you want to call it, through my education in this work that we do, I found that there were things, there were tools that were thrown at me, and sometimes they were thrown at me in ways that the person teaching understood, and sometimes they were thrown at me in ways that I don't think the person teaching them did understand. Meisner was an example of it. I was like, what is Meisner? And I don't know. I'm not quite sure I understand it, and I'm not quite sure my teacher understands it, but all these things were thrown at me, and it wasn't until later that I realized those tools are useful in the box. You just never know when. So I figure there are as many different methods as there are actors, and throw as many things into the toolbox as you might need. And one day you're going to be like, yeah, I need that stud finder. One day I need that hammer with, I know I use the stud finder for you.
Stud finder was that guy in leather who we
right.
saw.
He was Big Mac. No, you use these. You'll have as many different options of tools that you might want. So I'm very much a toolbox teacher. Okay. Whatever works to get it done. It's the Nike school of acting. Just do it, but be prepared.
Or
Nike and the Boy Scouts.
Right. Nike and the Boy Scouts?
Yeah. Nike, just do it. And the Boy Scouts, always be prepared.
Oh, I thought Nike and the Boy Scouts was your band.
That's my band when I was touring with Big Mac. It's true. It's a good name for a band. I don't think I'd go see it, but it's a good name. But I'm definitely Toolbox. Are you Toolbox too?
I'm Toolbox. Although I did have the base to my Toolbox was Hagen. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to study with her for several years back in New York, but then from her to also at the same school, Austin Pendleton, who I would say is more a Toolbox guy. Either you've frozen or you're
StreamYard.
Oh no, you weren't frozen. Spinning. You were just really interested in what I was saying.
That's correct. Actually, something spun. Both our windows spun, and I thought, wow. Spectrum's about to screw us up. But
that's
no,
weird. But even somebody like Uda, who had her method and her approach, and she wrote her book and she had her rules. I remember one time in class, a student threw a complete hissy fit one day and said, I don't understand. You tell us we have to do this, and you tell us we have to do that, and we have to journal, and we have to do historical imagination, and we have to do this, and all blah, 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 blah. And for every moment of the play, and if you're playing the lead in a play, there aren't enough hours in the day to do all the things you're telling us to do. Are you telling me that you do every single one of these things for the entire play to get ready? And she looked at him for a moment, and then she said, oh, no. I don't do any of it unless I need to. And I went, and that's when I went, oh, Toolbox.
That's great.
She's not saying open up the play and then by rote go through all of these things. I think one of the things I'm most fond of telling my students is that the amount of work you have to do on a role is a function of the distance between you and the character.
Yeah, I buy that. That makes sense to me. I love that. I love that. The idea that I don't do any of them until I need them. It's exactly right. We have to follow our instincts with so many things in what we do, particularly when we're trying to make some strong choices about material that feel integral to who we are. That's the only thing we've got to bring to the work is what is authentically interesting to us, what's authentically interesting to us. So to be able to say, no, I don't do any of that until I need it. We have to follow our gut with what we need in our acting. And sometimes, I'm going to figure out what shoes they're wearing. And that's my way in. And sometimes it's, what? I always wanted to be a giraffe, and here's my opportunity. And sometimes it's finding a biography in a journal that takes you in. Whatever works is what you should follow. But
as long as the shoes aren't Birkenstocks, you're going to be fine.
For some roles, that's the answer. But I haven't been booked in any of those yet, so I'm not a cork actor, I guess.
Yeah,
cork soul actor.
You said something though that I want to ask you about, because it's a word that I think trips up many a young actor, which is you said making a choice.
Yeah.
Making a strong choice, rather. You need to make a strong choice. What is that? you get a script for NCIS, and you're going in to audition for the role of the doctor, who is it's a one-day guest star, and you are not the guy who did it. You're a character who's moving the plot along.
Right.
Do you make a strong choice?
I think here's what I think, that you function in the story. You're part of the story. Your choices, the only thing you can't do is not make a choice. And oftentimes we're so paralyzed by the idea of, oh, I'm in front of this impressive casting director, or this impressive producing team, or this writer, or this director, or, oh, I don't know if I possibly can book this work, and I'm nervous, and so we give a beige read of whatever we're doing.
Right.
And beige is not, beige is a lovely color. It's just not mine. We don't make a choice about it. We sort of kind of squeak our way through it. And I think we need to make choices about our material, our interpretation of the material, and not make strong choices, but make our choices strong. So the job of an actor is, my job as an acting teacher is to see someone's choice, to try to figure out what it is. And if I don't understand it, ask questions of the student or ask questions of the person I'm working with and say, what are you trying to do there? Oh, I didn't get that. Go stronger, go harder with that choice so I can get that, because I didn't realize that's what you were doing. Yeah. So it's a matter of finding an interpretive choice and then just not pulling back from it, making sure that the choice you're making is strongly wrought.
Right. But you started off by saying understanding the story that you're in, because I have students who come from these schools where the teachers have said, you've got to make a strong choice, and they haven't figured out what the story's about yet. And they come in with some really strong choice that the casting director and the showrunner are going to say, well, that was interesting.
That was interesting and not what we need.
It's got nothing to do with the story that's being told here.
Yeah. You don't make those choices for the sake of the choices, for sure. And that's, I think, what sometimes teachers, particularly teachers who don't work as actors but teach acting, are able to say. Strong choice. We heard strong choice. No, it's find the choice and then do it strongly. Do it with grace, with power, with bigness, whatever you need. Well dissected there, Matthew, because you're right. There's a difference between those two things.
I see too many students who, as I teach an on-camera audition and self-tape workshop, and I see too many students who come in with these really strong, clear choices, and they have no idea of what the story is that the producers are trying to tell.
Right.
And you don't have the benefit of reading that entire script, but you do have the benefit of watching some episodes of NCIS or Castle or whatever it is you're going into audition for, and learning the kinds of stories they tell and the kind of slot they may be expecting you to fill.
Right.
And if you don't understand what's on the page and you don't understand what you're saying, you can't make that strong choice that you're talking about.
For sure. And with the shows that you're talking about, the crime shows, whether it's NCIS or Castle or CSI or Criminal Minds or name your favorite, every character that's guesting there is a potential suspect. So you have to walk this wonderful line of being, I'm either a red herring or I am the perp. And I have to deliver in each of the scenes a version that could make people in their living room argue against each other either way. A couple at home could say, no, he did it. No, he did not. I can tell he didn't. Let that be the conversation that goes on. So you've got this wonderful balancing act to make, which doesn't necessarily mean like, I think I need a parrot and an eye patch for this one. That's a strong choice. Right. No, we don't need that. We just need to know where we fit into what the script that we have is and what the genre of the project is, for sure.
They almost always know that I didn't do it. They generally look at me and they say, he didn't do it, but he fucked up somehow.
We know he did something. It just has nothing to do with this crime.
Yeah, I end up going to jail, but for ancillary things.
Jaywalking.
Yeah.
Things like, not murder. Putting too much spice in your tacos. I don't know what you did, but yeah, he did something.
He did something not good. That's funny because there is a role that I have played more than any other role.
Is it a doctor?
It
I think you'd make a wonderful doctor.
Well, there is something about my face I have learned that casting directors look at me and they say, "Oh, that's the guy who gives you bad news." Because time and again, I've said to people, "We did everything we could."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, so is there?
So you're either a doctor or an agent or manager, right? Either way,
yeah,
you're delivering. Yeah, they went another way.
It's not going. They went another way.
They went another way. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You have a terrible disease.
I sympathetically deliver the bad news. Is there something that you find like that they think of? Oh, that's a Rob role. I mean, I know down at South Coast Rep, you and I both have. There are things that we are thought of for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How would you characterize that thing? Like, if you were a casting director, you'd say, "Get me a Rob Nagle type for this." What would that role be?
There are several versions of it. My castability back when there was a commercial industry in Los Angeles and I did commercial work, I was the doofy dad who would make a mistake and, make my spouse roll her eyes. That's what I was always doing. So I was the doofy dad who tries to close the suitcase and crushes the camcorder. I was the doofy dad who says, "We got to go home from the pizza place. Please put the ball." And then they, of course, peg me with all the balls. I'm the guy who always gets somehow there's some kind of downtrodden mistake that happens because I'm just not talented enough to be a good father or husband. That's what my go-to was. So I don't know what you'd call that. But I do think that I've also found, depending on the genre or what you're working on, I've gotten calls from my reps before saying, "Hey, you're going in for this show." And I'll say, "Doctor," or sorry, not doctor, that's you. I'd say, "Am I a policeman or a detective?" And they say, "Hold on, let me look." "Oh, you're a policeman." And I'm like, "Okay, got it." So sometimes I can figure out what it is, but I also...
You mean a uni?
What was that?
A uniform?
Yeah, a uniformed cop or a detective. I've done a whole bunch of those.
Wow.
I mean, you wouldn't notice it now because I'm undercover with my quarantine facial hair. But I do a fair number of those, and I can also do attorneys and working class Joes.
Yeah,
so
I do a lot of attorneys. I've only been a detective once.
I've done a few of those, but I think generally what they go for. I don't really have a type, but I found myself playing really, really horrible people in theater productions for like four or five in a row. My wife Heather said, this is your fifth asshole in the last 2 years. And I said, "No, I didn't play it." And then she went through all of them. I was like, "Oh, she's right. I actually just played 5 really reprehensible characters."
Interesting.
And then I turn around and play, warm-hearted father figure or, good uncle or decent brother. So I don't know what my go-to is.
Right. Yeah.
But I do bring humanity to what I do. So there's a likability that I can bring to things, or I try to bring to things. Not that I play likable, but I can play someone who has a heart, whether I'm playing someone who really has a heart or someone who is, committing genocide.
Right. Well, you definitely have a likable quality. There's this one photograph I have, which I think of as Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life after he's been through the mill with the guys from Queer Eye for
the Straight Guy. I can't wait to see what this is. Oh, they really dressed him up really well.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's sort of the wall hanging behind is sort of like the metaphorical representation of not just a halo, but also a bell ringing.
Yeah.
Because he just got his wings.
Yeah, he finally got his wings.
Ding. Look at that. Stephanie Gerard, phenomenal photographer and good friend, took that photo. She was doing some editorial things, and she's got the greatest eye that I know.
It's
I
a
love
great
her very
photograph
much.
of you.
Thank you. I'd never thought of it that way. You were teasing that so well. Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life after Queer Eye got a hold of him.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Definitely.
I'll take it.
I think that's definitely
New casting type. Gay angels. That's what I want to play from here on out.
Yes, Gangels.
Gangels.
Yes. So are there? So let's get to this thing that I brought up earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This because I know you've done a lot of it, and I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of it, which is being in the room with the playwright and the director on a new play.
Yes.
And particularly down at South Coast Rep, which you and I get to do a lot, is being in the room with the playwright and a director with a new play for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
And that process. Talk about that a little bit.
The older I get, the more I love it. I've always loved being in the room with a writer who's working on something and is working in the early stages of something, or is, just hearing it out loud for the first time outside of their own head or their own, writing room, wherever they do their work. And I used to love it. I used to love it whenever I got the opportunity. Now I've actually thought about, I kind of wish I could just do that, only do that for the rest of my life, may it be many years, to just be in the room working on new work with writers, with a good team, with a director, with a dramaturge, or with a director who's good at dramaturgy, asking questions, having the actors around, giving voice to these lives, these characters that just were, out of someone's inspiration, out of their brain, out of their typewriter, out of their computer, off their pen. I love that process probably more than anything else I get to do, because you're finding treasure with them as it's coming off the page. That's ideally what you're doing. You're trying to create it by bringing your own inspiration to it and ask the questions that help them solidify and make that character or characters stronger in the process. I love it, love it, love it.
Okay, so you just said something that I think is really important when you talk, because what I wanted to ask you about is the skill set that's necessary to do that. You talked about asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What are the do's and don'ts, would you say, for the actor in those situations?
I don't, I'm still figuring out what that is. I think you get better.
I know. I've been there with you.
Reading a room, right? And reading writers too.
Yes.
They spend much of their time in solitude creating that, but that doesn't mean that they're all on the spectrum and they're going to look away when they talk to you. So getting to know the way a writer works as quickly as you possibly can, respectfully asking them questions, and trying to, instead of focus on what actors are usually focused on, which is, what do I want to do with this role? What do I want to do with this? Trying to figure out what the writer is trying to do with this role. And sometimes you'll get a note from a director or a casting director, and you won't understand the note at all. And instead of arguing it, try to understand the spirit of the note and deliver that. I find, there are two writers that I've had the great pleasure to work with that I think of the way they rewrite is kind of phenomenal. One is Sam Hunter, who I know you know, and I'm going to drop that name and pick that one up. And the other one is Rajiv Joseph, and I'm going to drop that name and pick that up. But the way they worked, and the times that I workshopped with each of them, Sam would come, he doesn't do this all the time, but I remember one day he came in with like 3 pages and he had changed like maybe 4 words on the 3 pages. Just changed or taken out 4 words. And I thought, my inside voice was, what's that? I don't understand that. What's going on? And then you read it out loud and it shifted the whole 4 pages with just these slight changes. Then you work with a writer like Rajiv, who's like a Bengal tiger, the way he can sometimes take pages away, murder characters if he needs to for the sake of the story he's trying to tell. And instead of having 3 or 4 notes, it's literally 40 pages are gone and 30 new pages have arrived overnight. And both of them are phenomenally gifted at the way they deliver those pages. And both of them are exciting to be around in the way they deliver those pages. Melissa Ross, who wrote Of Good Stock that I did at South Coast Rep, also had a really interesting way of working it. She'd be listening and she'd hear things. I remember once there was a rewrite on a page and I said, why is this said this way? It sounds wrong. It sounds like not even it's not grammatically correct. So the English teacher father in me is going, what's going on? And she and the director, GT Upchurch, just laughed. And I said, why are you laughing? She said, it's what you said during rehearsal yesterday. And it was wrong. And it sounded so good. We want it. I'm like, I said that? Oh, I'm a terrible actor. But my instinct said something other than what had been written. And then it was part of the play.
Well, let's look at a clip from that. The 2015 production of Good Stock at South Coast Rep. And then I have to tell you a story about this.
Lovely.
You have to pay attention.
Is any of this really important? This minutia of what people eat?
You're a food writer.
So?
That's what you do. You write passionately about the minutia.
Indulging the constantly changing food whims of your sisters is your job, not mine.
Just pick up some bluefish.
Oh, why do I have to deal with this?
Anything on the grill is your jurisdiction, right?
Preparing, not purchasing.
Come on. I gotta go to the store before everybody gets here, and the good fish place is in the
I told Grayson I'd get on my final draft by
okay,
tomorrow.
I'll do it.
It's my first national cover story.
I'll do it. It's fine.
Woohoo! Family weekend!
Woo-hoo!
Fun times for all!
I knew you at this point, but I didn't know you well yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we had done a reading together at that point. I'm not sure. And I knew I liked your work, but I saw that play opening night and was just blown away by you, by the whole thing, by your entrance into the first, but the freedom that you brought to all of that at the beginning of the play was just incredibly inspiring. And I saw the play opening night, and then it was playing through Pacific Playwrights Festival. And when we got to Pacific Playwrights Festival, I got a ticket so that I could see it again. And I just got a single ticket, and I come into the audience and I sit down and I take my seat. And you had that incredible beginning where the lights in the theater didn't even go out. The play just sort of gently started.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit down in my seat, and Leo Marks comes in and happens to have the seat next to me. And Leo and I were already friends at that point because I'd worked with his wife many times. And he sat down next to me, and we're sitting there chatting. And then the lights did that little shift, and Melanie comes walking out on stage with her basket from the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I burst into tears. And Leo looks at me and he says, "It hasn't even started yet." And I said, "But I know what's coming."
I love that.
A wreck from the beginning, just dissolved into tears.
Oh, I love that. That was a special one.
It was. And, you know, it's funny. My mom is a playwright, and a wonderful playwright. And she's working on a new play, and I've been trying to help her cast a West Coast reading of it. And Melanie is one of the people who I recommended. And she doesn't know Melanie's work. And today, getting ready for the interview with her, I said, "Hey, come look at this clip of this fellow who I'm interviewing tonight." And I showed her the clip that we just watched. And as we're watching it, she looks at Melanie, not remembering the name, because this was maybe 8 months ago that I said, "I think I have somebody in mind who would be good for your new play." And she's watching the clip and she says, "Is that the woman who you're thinking of for the reading?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "She would be perfect."
Yes, she would.
But
Melanie,
the two of you were just so in sync. And so now she's an Antaeus member as well.
Yes,
correct?
she is. Melanie Laura, brilliant.
Have you worked
human
with her
being.
together?
That was the one. Doing that one, I fell in love with working with her, and had to fall in love with her in that show. And it was easy to do because we had such a beautiful rapport.
They just couldn't pay you enough, could they?
No, they couldn't really. It was truly an honor. That's a special one. It will always be in my heart. And, you know, with the cast of all six of us, though, the whole group, Todd Lowe and Andrea Siglaski and Kat Foster, and Corey Brill and Melanie Laura and G.T. Upchurch directing it, and Melissa Ross wrote that piece, and it was one of the greatest gifts of my career to be able to do that show with that group.
Beautiful production. My friend Bob asks, he's going back a little bit. I didn't notice that this question had been asked about when we're sitting down to do a reading, work on a new play. He wants to know, in those situations, do you know anything about your character ahead of time, or are you seeing it for the very first time when you sit with the director and writer?
Hopefully you've read it before you sit down. Obviously, there's sometimes when you don't have an opportunity to do that. If you've been working on a set the night before and you literally wrapped and fell asleep and drove to Costa Mesa in the morning and you haven't been able to read it, sometimes that situation will arise, and you'll just hope that the great, the Deus Ex Machina, the God, will descend while you're performing. But you usually have a chance to, and the ideal world is to read the thing beforehand. Just like with all your auditions, you want to read any script you can get beforehand, so you have a sense from reading it what you might want to do with it.
Well, I have a little trick that I use, though.
What's that?
It's actually not a trick. It's something I like to do even if I have read the play before, is at that first reading, I like to have a reading where we just don't really do anything, so that we can just hear the words. Yeah. Because I feel so many actors get themselves into, again, going back to choices, they get themselves into trouble making strong choices before we really know what this is about. And I mean, sometimes, and you and I have done these, you read a play and some plays are this thick. Right. And you know what it's about reading it once. Then you can go into those first readings and make some strong choices and be funny and blah. But other plays, that might have a lot more depth to them, I think you make those strong choices in the first reading at your peril.
I hear that too. And I'll even add to that point that you're making, that I had a director who said to me once, my only job is to cast the hell out of this production and then get it back to the first table read by opening night. And I thought, what an interesting way to work, because as far as he was concerned, if he's done the casting right, the performances are going to be right the first time it comes out. And I don't know if it's actually accurate or if other directors would agree, but I thought, what an interesting way to work. And anyway, your gut is, it's like the toolbox theory. What are you going to do on this read through? This one I know. Matt's in it with me. I know what I want to do with that scene because I read that scene and I was already excited by what I'm going to do with Matthew Arkin in that scene.
You're going to torture me. Basically.
I'm going to torture you,
or try and get me to
try to make you crack up. That's the idea. Look, it happened to me too. I did a reading of Mrs. Warren's Profession once with Tim Curry. I was lucky enough to be on stage.
That hit my foot.
That one hit your foot from across the miles.
Yeah.
Tim Curry, but you have to know this. He pulled a Frankenfurter on me in the middle of Mrs. Warren's Profession. He was supposed to say something like, I must confess, I've been affected. And he sort of said, he's like, I must confess, I've been affected. I could not get through it because all I was thinking was Rocky Horror. And sometimes you're going to know what that inspiration is. Sometimes it's going to be thrown at you in weird curveball ways. And I think one of the things that I try to do is just exercise freedom. Let everything you do be a process. Every time you do it, be a process. Don't ever aim for product. Every time you do the show, every show is a new exploration of it, built up on the shoulders of what you've learned before.
You know who I can't be on stage with?
Who?
Is Nikki Dukas.
Why?
Because she and I, and we keep getting cast together. We keep working together. And we have to look at each other's ears because we cannot look at each other
without, you crack each other up
without
all the time?
losing it.
I find that remarkably charming, and you really make sure you don't say that out loud because casting directors will stop casting you together, and you want to be able to keep working with them. Thank God this isn't live streaming anywhere.
No.
I love that delicate balance of staying in a work and being so delighted by the people you're working with that it's fun on the two levels, both as a character and as an actor. That's a great vibration to land on when you're working with somebody.
Well, that's one of the great things about South Coast too, is getting to work with people who you've worked with so many times that you have a vocabulary.
Yes.
How do you
You have a vocabulary. You can't say it, but you have a vocabulary.
Yes. I'm trained, you know.
We didn't do any vocal exercises before this conversation. We don't have to have really crisp articulation. Let's move on from that.
No.
But to have an ensemble, a group that you've worked with, to know people well enough it's such a gift to have that.
That's
for sure.
I'm
going to try that with you. I'm going to try looking at your ear the next time I work with you.
My ear, or just look like in the middle of my forehead,
right above your eyes,
right above my eyes.
Can you tell I'm doing it right now? I'm doing it right now.
That's hard. This thing is impossible because nobody's ever looking at any. You know, I teach my classes and I'm like this. You know, or you know, I teach classes and I have 20 students in postage stamps. And one of them says something, and I go like this, you know, and I think I'm looking at them they don't know I'm looking at them on the screen.
They have no idea. The one thing we haven't been prepared for is quarantine eye lines. We need a DP, a cinematographer on the other side of all of our sessions to tell us, no, too far to the left.
Yeah. Can you give me an eye line? Put that little piece of white tape on the lens hood.
Right on the lens. Yeah. I'll put it right over here, right over the lens. How about that? Is that good? Is that okay?
That's very good.
Very good. Yeah. This is provides a whole bunch of new challenges. This whole the boxes that we're in right now to be safe.
So so much of your life obviously is in and around theater, either making or teaching. And as is mine, either teaching acting or teaching at the film school or doing these or performing or doing voice work. Do you do anything divorced from this that feeds you?
I don't think I do. This feeds me and nourishes me in profound ways. And I feel like I want to put as much attention as I possibly can into it. There are escapes, of course, but nothing feeds me quite like acting and creating stories through it. And nothing feeds me like teaching that very thing. I asked a friend once when I was working on a play in Portland, if as we were getting to know each other, he's a chef up there, James Beard Award-winning chef, and I said, "What have you ever thought about being on a show, a TV show, a reality show, like cooking? Like Top Chef was big. Have you ever thought about doing that?" And he said, "No, the thing I love to do is cook. I mean, what chefs do, the first thing they do is they cook. The second thing they do is they teach. And anytime I'd be spending on a reality show about a competition would be time away from my craft." And I'd never thought of it in the context of a kitchen before, in the context of a restaurant before. But I really admired that thought. And I think it kind of pulled me into a storytelling zone and realized, like, this is actually what I can do and be profoundly nourished by it. I'm sure the answer to that question that my wife would give or my friends would give would be something, "Oh no, he likes to do this." But right now, I can't think of those things. I literally can't. Other than I enjoy food. I'm a foodie. My wife's an amazing chef, and we very much appreciate well-prepared food. So is that a talent? I don't think so.
I'm not saying a talent. I'm saying
is that something that burn off steam? Yeah.
I don't necessarily mean a talent, but I mean something that you feel that you turn to for the same kind of nourishment, but for like to get away from theater for a little bit, to something. I ride not lately since the pandemic hit. That has really fallen off for me for a number of reasons. But when I was back in California and when I get back there, cycling certainly is something, but also cooking. And I have certain friends that I cook with, and that fellowship while we're, but that becomes another artistic venture.
Yeah.
And writing has become more a bigger and bigger part of my life.
Do you enjoy that part?
The writing?
Yeah,
I love it.
Good.
I love it. Yeah.
Did you love it from the beginning, or is it something that you've developed? The love has developed as you've done it more and more. Was it ever a struggle, or was it always something that was, oh, this is part of who I am?
No, it was a struggle for a while. I had one story that I sort of needed to tell, and that was a struggle to get through it and get it out. But in the process of doing that, I started finding other ideas that I wanted to. But writing for me has always been a function of the idea first and then needing to tell that story rather than, I have a desire to be a writer.
Gotcha.
People have always said, not always, many people say to me, who've read my novel or read some of my screen, you should write a play. Why don't you write a play? And it's like, I would love to write a play. I don't have a play. And they say, what do you mean? I say, well, to me, like the idea dictates what it's going to be. Like I'll have an idea and it's clear whether that's a novel or a screenplay or a pilot script. It's like it fits that form. And I have very particular feelings about the making of a play. I feel like a lot of the plays that I'm seeing lately are not well wrought. They don't have anything near the four unities, anything approaching them. And I feel like, boy, I'm watching the work of somebody who wants to be a playwright rather than somebody who has something to say.
Gotcha.
So feel free the next time we see each other just to, slap me in the face for being so pretentious.
Well, my mother-in-law, who went from acting into writing years and years and years ago, said once, she either said it to me or I overheard it, the secret to writing is staying in the chair. And I always thought that's a really simple but very powerful message to remember. The secret is staying in the chair. And maybe I'm not suggesting you need to write a play, but maybe part of it is staying in the chair and waiting.
Yeah. If I have an idea that says to me, oh, this is a play. I just finished a screenplay. And if I told you the idea, you would say, yes, obviously that's a movie. It couldn't be anything else. And other ideas that are pilot scripts are clearly, the ideas themselves are clearly setups.
The beginning of
an ending.
A long story, right?
They're clearly situations that need to be explored in a long form. The other question, the question I generally like to wrap up with is, I know that you said from the time you were 11 you wanted to be doing this, and even though I said this is the question I wrap up with, we don't have to stop here.
We're gonna go for days.
We're gonna go. I'm gonna get the bourbon. We're gonna go overnight. We're going to be here all night long. I'm going to call Reed Birney and have him back on the show and join us.
Pop him in. I want to ask him some questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a wonderful guest. He's an incredible raconteur. I actually did read Bernie in something once where I had to play a character in something and I didn't know what to do.
You just did read Bernie?
How would Reed tell this story? And I did him.
Toolbox. That's called Toolbox acting.
And I called him and I said, you got wonderful reviews. They loved you.
They had no idea what I was doing.
But so you said that you wanted to do this from the time that you were 11. Oh, now see, we got another question here.
Go ahead. It won't go ahead.
This is Androvic for Justice. Mm-hmm. This is a friend of mine who I went to law school with.
Yay.
Who is running for judge.
Oh, terrific.
Justice of the Supreme Court here in New York State. And I would vote for him if I lived in New York State because he knows what the heck he's talking about and he's a great guy. But he wants to know if the option of doing a long stage run in a particular production, is there a playwright or specific character that you would like to do? Oh, don't ask me that question.
We'll be here for all night. Let me get my list out. Check out the scroll. A long run in a particular production. You know, I don't think I'm done. I did one in Los Angeles, play in Los Angeles, and then did it off Broadway in 2016 and 2017, written by Jason Odell Williams, called Church and State. And it was about a North Carolina Republican senator. There's a school shooting in his hometown, and he has some thoughts afterwards about it. And I don't think I'm done with that role or with that play. So that comes to mind. But the others there's so many playwrights I want to work with. Not all of them are calling right now. But I'd be intrigued in anything that came my way, really. You know, it made me think like, wow, if Susan Laurie Parks wrote something and I was slotted in there and I could possibly be a part of that, yes, I'm in. I'm on board. I don't know what the character would be. It could be anything, really.
Do you like the writers' long run?
I do. I like the challenge of a long run and the challenge of the exploration of a long run. I've never done a long run as long as I'm sure you have done runs. I know your Dinner with Friends run was a long. You did it for a year, didn't you? A longer than a year and a half.
20 months.
I miscalculated, but yeah, I like the idea of doing that because I've never done it before, and the challenge of what that might be. But that's, grass is greener. What about you? If you have the option of doing a long run in a particular production, is there a playwright or a specific character or a specific actor you'd want to work with?
Oh, I think you would wear thin after a few weeks.
I know. 20 months with you would be a lot.
Actors, if I could do a play with you, here, I'm going to put my cast together.
Okay.
You.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going to be like me and Antaeus. No, it's like you, Nikki, Leo, Corey Brill, Tessa Aubergenois, Amy Aquino. Amy Aquino, when she was on the show, I said, we have completely different methods. I said to her, I said, your method is no until it's yes, and my method is yes until it's no.
I love that. I think you need to write that play.
No,
you just put the cast. No, you can call it no until it's yes.
No,
take that cast. Those are the characters you have to work with. Start.
And Melanie Laura, who I haven't worked with, but who just astounds me every time I see her work. Yeah, that would be a good room there.
That's a great room. I think you should be the playwright who writes that. And I don't care what the specific character is, but you have to write a 10-minute play tonight while we're raconteuring. and
Oh,
then send it out to all of us, and we'll see if we can get some funding.
you tell a story. I'll jot down a few.
I'll just jot down some notes. Here, do you mind if I press record? Just go.
But so back to this question.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that it was at about 11 that you got this bug, and I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And for me, it was at the age of 5, backstage watching my dad, like, wow, you can jump off a bridge for a living. And
what was he doing? Les Miserables? What was he doing? Jumping off a bridge? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Love by Mauritius.
There you go.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Harry Berlin, he jumped off the bridge, and there was a stagehand throwing, a bucket of water up.
Water in the air. It was magic.
Yeah, and after the show, they let me jump into the mattresses. I thought, well, this is what I want to do for a living.
This is what I want to do. This is great. Playground.
And then I got older, and it's like, oh, famous and money and cars and women and, like all, I mean, not for me, but for others.
Some people are getting those things.
And just, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it changes. What, and I know very particularly what it is for me that is the most important thing about what we do, aside from the millions of dollars that are pouring in.
Right.
What is it for you that keeps you going and doing this?
There's, I think you're right. There's a point at which it shifts into something else, despite all the millions of dollars and all the fancy cars and all the trappings of it that some people receive and some do not. It shifts into an ability to change through story. I think what we do is important. It's not the most important. It's not first responders. But what we do is we tell the same stories that they told in the caves about the hunts back in the day of the cave paintings. It's the same stories that we tell in mosques and temples and churches around the world that are in sermons. And sometimes it's poetry that's shared, and sometimes they're plays. But there's spoken words said out loud that we find recognition in, and we find healing in the shared communal experience of telling story. And for me, that's what gets my juices going, when I'm part of that and being affected by a story, when I get to escape into a story. It doesn't matter what it is. I get to escape into a story and see myself there, and not to push the pretension of it, but it's that holding the mirror up to nature. It's that holding the mirror up to our audience and showing them who they are and who we all are in a common humanity. And that's what gets me excited about it. And, sometimes we're more effective at it than other times. But when you walk out of a production and you see someone affected by it who has to talk to you because the play about gun safety and gun reform affected them because they lost someone to gun violence, or they had to defend the murderer in Aurora, Colorado, because that was their job as a defense attorney, as a public defender. Or it's a couple that are holding on to each other and they said, we needed to laugh like this tonight. We were getting ready to file for divorce, but I think we're going to give this another shot. Based on the silly little play they just watched, the ability to change perspectives, not just of the people involved in the production, but also of the people who watch it, or see the television show, or see the feature film, or see the short movie. That thing is important, I think, and it's useful. And if you're hearing any noises, my dog decided to come visit, and that's not my stomach. He just decided to come and say hi. Hi. This is, and the sound, sorry about the sound. This will go on all night if I'm not careful. I think he just ate dinner, and then he's like, hey, I just want to tell you I ate dinner. Thank you. Very sweet of you. This is Houston.
Hi,
I know. It's great to see you.
I want to end on that note, because you just gave voice very beautifully, very eloquently to what is my religion.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so,
and it is that. I think it is distinctly spiritual. It is. A writer friend Yep. Dog keeps unplugging my light. Sorry. Let me help out. This is not important. The light is what we're talking about. A friend said once a few years ago on a show, he said, what you did with that role was you're communicating with the divine. You're touching the divine in some kind of way with the stories that you're telling. And I thought, well, that's a lovely way to put it. I think I agree, because there is something distinctly spiritual about it. And it is, for me, religious and something worthy of worship, because it is our common humanity that we find company in and collective healing in. And yeah, so I'm with you. That's why we do it. That's why I do it.
That's spectacular. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming in and
Thank
chatting.
you for asking me. You're one of my favorite people in the world, and just to sit and talk with you about this is meaningful to me.
I would do this even if they weren't paying us.
Yes, me
Fred
too.
Willard, you remember Fred Willard's line in Roxanne, when Fred Willard's making a speech to the town? He plays the mayor, and he says,
What does he say?
"I would rather be with the people of this town than with the finest people in the world."
I really, really hope. Well, I don't know whether that was written that way or that was a Fred Willard, but either way, yeah, I feel the same way. And by the way, if you want to start a club and you want to have me as a member, I'd never want to belong to that, but I will join it. It's like Groucho. I'd never want to be in a club I would never want to belong to a club that would have me as a member. But I love those clubs that would have me as a member.
Yeah.
And I adore you.
Me too. You.
Thanks for this. You have my Venmo?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Stay safe and wash your hands, Matthew.
You too. And wash your face.
The Vaseline, it keeps it clean and young.
Oh, wow. Perfect.
Quarantine treatments. Take care, okay?
Good night.
Good night.